The first thing Madalena noticed was the sound, a small, choked sob, like that of an injured bird trying to cry out in the midst of the silence of an empty cemetery. The wind on that cold October morning dragged dry leaves across the stone ground and swirled around the tombstones with the lightness of a lament. But the crying wasn't from the wind. It was human, and it broke the heart. Have you ever been humiliated by someone who thought they had more power? Comment: God is my silent justice. Madalena Blackstone, with her perfectly combed silver hair and a leather purse worth more than a doctor's salary, stopped 2 meters from her son's tomb, the same tomb she had visited religiously for 12 years, every Thursday at 9 in the morning. It was an unbreakable routine, as cold as the black marble covering the remains of Andrew Blackstone III. But that morning, something broke the routine. There was a child kneeling on the still damp grass. A boy. He couldn't have been more than 7 years old. His eyes were swollen, his clothes simple, a worn superhero t-shirt, frayed jeans, sneakers with untied laces. But it was the expression on his face that left her paralyzed. It wasn't just sadness. It was old pain. Pain that shouldn't live on a child's face. "What are you doing here?" Her voice came out harsher than she intended, like an automatic defense mechanism. The boy flinched. He wiped his face with the back of his dirty hand and looked at her with a gaze that mixed fear and courage. "He was my father," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Madalena's eyes widened as if she'd heard a heresy. She let out a dry laugh. "Your father?" she repeated, incredulous. "Andrew Blackstone. Is that what you're saying?" The boy nodded slowly. The wind blew harder, and the woman felt a chill that didn't come from the cold. "What's your name?" she asked, a controlled anger building in her throat. Noah Santiago." The surname hit Madalena like a stone thrown through a cathedral's stained glass window. Santiago. The same surname as the former housekeeper she had fired in haste a decade ago without explanation. A black woman, educated, soft-spoken, and dangerous. Dangerous because she knew too much. Madalena hadn't thought of her in years. And now, standing before her, was a boy claiming to be Andrew's son, with the same eye shape, the same curved chin, and the same sad eyes Andrew had when he said he was suffocating. "Get up," she ordered, not knowing why. "Where's your mother?" "She didn't let me come, but I came anyway." He stood slowly, trembling. "I just wanted to talk to him." "He's dead," Madalena said, harsher than she meant to. "Dead for 12 years. "I know." The boy's voice wavered. "But my mom says he still listens. That heaven listens when you love for real." Madalena swallowed hard. A flash of memory crossed her mind. Andrew at 15, playing the piano while she argued with her husband upstairs. Andrew at 22, saying he wanted to abandon everything to open a music school. Andrew at 30, saying he couldn't stand living trapped by a name, a legacy, an empire of arrogance. She looked at the boy again. Every feature confirmed the impossible. The resemblance wasn't just physical. It was spiritual. It was as if his eyes were a second chance for everything Andrew couldn't live. "Come with me," she said, turning without waiting for a response. Noah hesitated but followed her, not because he trusted her, but because he sensed there was something to be revealed in the silence between the 2 generations carrying the same blood, even if the world denied it. Inside the black car that seemed like a silent ship on wheels, Madalena remained quiet for long minutes. Noah looked out the window, fascinated. He had never been in such a beautiful car. He had never even seen the neighborhood where Madalena lived. The houses looked like castles. The trees had plaques with scientific names. There were men mowing lawns as if they were pruning diamonds. When they arrived at the Blackstone mansion, Noah stepped out, not understanding why he was there. The main door was opened by a butler who widened his eyes upon seeing him. "Madam, this boy, he's with me." She cut him off, impatient. She led him to the library, a high-ceilinged room filled with books that seemed never to have been read, with a lit fireplace despite the warmth. Madalena sat in a leather armchair and stared at Noah as if facing a ghost. "Your mother, is she Esperanza Santiago?" "Yes, ma'am." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked older, her wrinkles deeper, her soul more tired. "She never came to me. Never asked for money. My mom doesn't want anything Andrew had. She just wished he could have seen my face. She cried a lot at his funeral, but they wouldn't let her get close. They said she was nothing." The boy's words were like a mirror thrown in her face. It wasn't just pain, it was an accusation, it was the truth. "And why did you come today?" Noah looked at his hands, then at her. "Because today's my birthday, and I just wanted to know if he'd think of me, if he'd be proud." Madalena felt the ground shift. For the first time in years, she was speechless. The weight of lineage, decisions, and coldness crashed onto her shoulders like an avalanche. She stood and, without saying a word, walked to a safe behind a painting. She entered the code, her son's name. From it, she took a small wooden box and handed it to Noah. "This is all he left. Something I never understood why he kept." The boy opened it carefully. Inside was a folded note, handwritten. In firm but emotional letters, Andrew had written, "If one day my love becomes a legacy, may it find light in the eyes of the son the world forbade me to have." The room fell silent. Madalena sat again, drained. "The world, that's us," she murmured. "We're the ones who forbade it." And for the first time since Andrew's death, real tears streamed down Madalena Blackstone's face. Noah held the note as if it were made of glass. His fingers trembled, his eyes wide, as if he were reading more than words, as if he were being acknowledged, as if, for the first time in his life, he officially existed for someone who was no longer here. That piece of paper validated not just his pain, but his story, and Madalena, witnessing it, seemed smaller than ever, not in physical size, but in the smallness of the choices she had made. She stood slowly, crossing the library with slow, dragging steps, as if each meter required crossing decades of denial, pride, and silence. She stopped before a portrait of Andrew hanging above the fireplace, his young, beautiful, impassive face, a painting done shortly before his death. How many times had she stared at that image, hoping for answers? Now she saw only absence, an emptiness built by her own arrogance. "He loved you," she said, her voice barely audible. "I saw it in his eyes, but I never wanted to accept why." Noah watched her in silence. Something inside him told him not to trust this woman, but at the same time, he felt she was being sincere for the first time. Not as a rich woman, not as a powerful one, but as a broken mother. "My mom says she was kicked out before she could tell him she was pregnant," Noah said, lowering his gaze. "That she knocked on his door, but no one let her in. And then he died." Madalena didn't respond. She just closed her eyes tightly, as if trying to squeeze back the lost time with her eyelids. Later, she asked Noah to stay for dinner. They cooked together, something she had never done with her own son. Madalena chopped vegetables with an unusual gentleness, as if it were part of a silent reparation. Noah laughed when he burned his fingers on the pan, and with each of his smiles, she felt her old house being invaded by a soul she herself had denied. But that same night, while Noah slept in one of the guest rooms, Andrew's old room, Madalena made a call. "Find out everything about Esperanza Santiago," she said coldly. "Where she lives, who she works for, if she ever sued the family. I need every detail, and fast." The private investigator she had hired for years didn't ask questions, but Madalena did something she hadn't done since Andrew's funeral. She climbed the stairs to the piano upstairs. She ran her fingers over the dusty keys, and played, not with technique but with longing. Meanwhile, in the simple neighborhood where he lived with his mother, Noah was being searched for. Esperanza, desperate, had already gone to the police, alerted neighbors, checked hospitals. When she finally learned where he was, she was in shock. The Blackstone Mansion. She knew that address. She knew the tall, cold gates that had once closed forever in front of her. The next day, at 7 in the morning, she was there, standing in front of the house, wearing the same dignity she used as a shield. The security guards hesitated, but Madalena ordered them to let her in. When Esperanza walked through the door and saw Noah having breakfast with Madalena at a marble table, she froze. "You," Madalena said, standing, "you owe me an explanation." "Me?" Esperanza took a step forward, her voice firm. "The world owes me, but you can start." The silence between them was so thick that even the cutlery on the table seemed afraid to move. "Why didn't you come to me?" Madalena asked. "Because the same world that kicked me out would never listen to me. I was black, poor, invisible. When I tried to deliver a letter to Andrew, they said he wasn't there, and 2 days later, he was dead, choked on pills no one could explain. But you know, don't you?" Madalena blinked. For a second, her face contorted, as if the mask were about to fall. "Are you saying I was to blame? I'm saying your silence killed him. that your legacy mattered more than your truth, that you preferred the world to believe your son was a high society martyr than to let them know he loved someone like me. Madalena took a step back. This wasn't just an accusation, it was the naked truth, exposed in the middle of her living room. But she didn't respond. She just looked at Noah. He's like his father, too strong for the fragile world around him. Esperanza took her son by the hand and turned to leave. We won't accept your guilt disguised as kindness. We don't want charity. He has everything he needs: truth, dignity, and love. 3 things this house never knew. But before they crossed the threshold, Madalena said something no one expected. Then sue me. Esperanza turned slowly. What? Sue me. For concealing an heir. For emotional alienation. For everything. I need to be judged. And the world needs to hear your story. His. Andrew's. The one erased for convenience. Let's put it all out in the open. Because only when the truth is exposed will he finally rest. Esperanza stared at the woman for a long time. Her eyes were wet, but not with fear, with liberation. I won't do it for revenge, she said. I'll do it for justice. And she left, holding Noah's hand. But now, with her head held high. 3 weeks later, the headline exploded like a bomb. Black heir of Andrew Blackstone emerges. Mother expelled by wealthy grandmother, fights for judicial recognition. The press, hungry for noble blood, didn't hesitate. TV shows, interviews, podcasts. Esperanza remained steadfast, dignified, refusing millions in offers to tell all for sensationalism. Meanwhile, Madalena did the unthinkable. She confessed. In public letters, measured interviews, statements to shareholders. Her fortune began to crumble, but her soul was finally breaking free from the marble prison she had lived in. The trial was broadcast live. Esperanza read Andrew's letter, and the entire room fell silent. When she finished, the judge declared Noah the legitimate heir to part of the Blackstone estate, with his full name and right to his story. But more than that, it was the final image that moved the country. Madalena kneeling before Noah, handing him an unfinished musical score written by Andrew, with the words, "For when I am only silence, but my son is music." That morning, something changed in the air of New York. For the first time, the gate of the Blackstone mansion was left ajar, and a line of children with backpacks walked through the once inaccessible gardens. The sound echoing from inside the house was no longer that of solitary footsteps on marble floors or the clinking of crystal glasses, but the vibrant sound of plucked strings, pressed keys, tuned voices. The mansion had been transformed into the Andrew Santiago Blackstone Foundation for Music and Social Justice. Noah ran through the halls with a violin in hand, pointing out to a group of new students where each classroom was. His eyes shone not just from being there, but from knowing he belonged in that space. He was the living symbol of something money could never buy: redeemed dignity. Madalena watched everything from afar, seated on one of the balconies, wrapped in a linen shawl. Her tired but calmer eyes followed the boy's steps, as if guarding a miracle in motion. Since the trial, she had stepped down from the company board, donating a significant portion of her fortune to the foundation and its cause. Society whispered, of course, but she no longer cared what the salons said, only what the heavens would say. On a rainy afternoon, Esperanza arrived with an envelope in her hands. She found Madalena in the library, that same room where their first reunion had taken place. "I got this from the court," she said, extending the envelope. "The final step is complete. Noah now officially carries his father's name, and more importantly, he carries his legacy in his name, but not its weight." Madalena held the envelope for a moment. She didn't open it. She simply placed it on the piano and ran her fingers over the keys, as if giving thanks in silence. "He'll be better than both of us," she murmured. "He already is," Esperanza replied softly. A moment of silent peace hung between them. They weren't friends. They weren't enemies. They were survivors of the same war, fought in opposite trenches, and now they shared the field of reconstruction. Days later, during a simple but moving ceremony, Noah took the stage at the foundation to present his first composition. The audience was made up of young people like him, children invisible to the city's eyes, but who now found shelter in that fortress turned home. Before playing, Noah took the microphone. "This piece is called When My Father Heard Me," he said, "and it's not just about him. It's about every person who ever cried alone thinking no one saw, but God did. The silence that followed was absolute, and when the first notes echoed from the piano, simple but profound, something broke inside everyone there. The music spoke more than words ever could. Madalena, seated in the front row, held a small frame with Andrew's last photograph. Beside it, the same note Noah had found in the safe, and on it, she had written in trembling handwriting, a new phrase. The love I denied bloomed without me, and now it teaches me to live. The press, which had once sensationalized the case, now surrendered to the story of overcoming, but Esperanza refused contracts, refused interviews. She said the greatest justice had already been done, not in money, but in truth. One night, as she locked the foundation's doors, Madalena found Noah alone, seated at the piano. "It's late," she said. "Your mum must be waiting for you." "She let me stay a bit longer," he replied. "Today's my dad's birthday, and I wanted to play just for him." She smiled, a true smile stripped of masks. She sat beside him on the wooden bench. "Can I listen with you?" Noah nodded, and together they played. It was a new melody, but within it were ancient echoes of the past that bled, the present that was reborn, and the future that now had sound, color, and a name. The next day, Andrew's old tombstone was replaced. The cold marble gave way to a simple piece carved from cherry wood. And now, alongside his full name, the inscription read, "Father of Noah, son of Esperanza, loved despite the silence, redeemed by the truth." People began visiting the tomb not out of idolatry, but gratitude. That story had transformed hearts, opened doors, and broken invisible social walls that seemed eternal. In the final scene, a new child, a black girl with braided hair, sits alone at the foundation's piano. She hesitates, trembles, but then Noah appears. He sits beside her, smiles and says, "You don't have to be afraid. Here we play until the pain turns into melody." She smiles back, plays the first note, and the cycle begins again, with hope, with music, with justice. The morning after the concert, Madalena descended the stairs with slow but steady steps. The piano still radiated the warmth of the previous night, and the house carried a new sound, not of mourning, but of presence. She opened the front windows, something she hadn't done in decades. The sun invaded the room with a boldness that would once have been considered improper. Now, it was welcome. Noah was already awake. Sitting on the floor of the back porch, with a notebook of sheet music open in his lap, he drew small musical notes alongside sketches of trees and birds. He wasn't just studying music. He was recording life as it finally began to make sense. When he saw Madalena, he smiled, a short, shy smile that carried more truth than entire speeches. She sat beside him without saying a word. She just watched. "You know what I was thinking?" he asked, turning the notebook to her. "We could have an open day for the community. Like kids from the neighborhood, people who've never seen a piano up close." She looked at him as if seeing a sunrise. "You want to turn this house into a haven for talents?" "Not just talents," Noah said, drawing a heart in the corner of the page, "but for those who never got a chance." She didn't respond. She just ran her hand through his hair, with a tenderness she had never dared give her own son. Meanwhile, far from there, Esperanza was preparing for her new routine. She had left her job cleaning a public hospital and was now the foundation's coordinator alongside Madalena. The world saw her differently now, but she still carried some internal scars. She didn't trust easily, nor did she forgive quickly. But she knew justice wasn't vengeance. It was truth illuminating what had once been shadow. At the foundation's re-inauguration ceremony, everyone was there. Children from the outskirts, street musicians, teachers, Andrew's former students. Madalena spoke in a low but firm voice. "This house was built with bricks of pride. Today it will be rebuilt with notes of love. May every room echo the music of those the world tried to silence." At the end of her speech, she symbolically handed the keys to Noah, who held them with small hands but upright posture. That image swept the country. The former matron of the elite handing her legacy to a black child, heir to everything that had been ignored. It was more than a gesture. It was reparation. Weeks passed. The project grew. Children came by bus from forgotten neighborhoods. Teenagers found their voice in choirs, and young adults learned to turn pain into melody. The foundation became a refuge, resistance, rebirth. One night Madalena found a letter left on the piano. It had no sender, but she recognized the handwriting. It was Noah's. "Dear Grandma, sometimes I wonder if Grandpa up in heaven sees all this, if he hears the music we make here, if he smiles when we laugh. Today I heard my mum say that forgiving is when you let someone else out of prison, but you realize it was you who was locked up. I think that's what happened to you. I forgive you. And more than that, I love you. Noah." She read the letter several times, like someone drinking water desperately. Then she folded it, placed it on Andrew's portrait and murmured, "He set you free. And now, you've set me free too." On her 80th birthday, Madalena refused the gala party her old friends wanted to throw. She asked only for a recital by the Foundation's students. It was a simple day, but amidst the notes of the instruments and the children's voices, she heard something she had never heard in all her years of life: belonging. In the final piece of the day, Noah surprised everyone by presenting an original composition called Broken Roots. He explained before playing, "It's about when a tree is cut down but still blooms, about people like my mom, like my dad, like my grandma, like all of us who bloom even when they said we couldn't." The first notes were soft but laden with history. Madalena cried, not like before, not out of guilt, but out of love. Months later, the Foundation received the National Award for Artistic Inclusion. Noah took the stage with Esperanza by his side. Journalists asked if he planned to pursue a music career, and he answered with the ease of someone who already understood his calling. "I want to do what my dad wanted to do, teach. But now, I want to teach music to those the world forgot to hear." The auditorium gave a standing ovation. Outside, a reporter approached Madalena. "Mrs. Blackston, do you regret losing so many years to pride?" She looked at Noah talking to children on the theater steps. Then she looked at the dark but starry sky and answered with a half-smile, "Pride is a silent prison. Freedom begins when we kneel, and it took a child crying at my son's grave for me to understand that." The next morning, Andrew's tombstone woke to new flowers. No one knew who had left them, but tied to the arrangement were two ribbons. One read, "Beloved Father," the other, "Rediscovered Son." And on the stone bench beside the tomb, a musical score was left behind. The title, written in childish handwriting, read, "When Silence Sings."